SABC, together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, bring you the final verdict. In the pursuit of justice, we are all equal before the law. These are some of the stories that have led to the final verdict. Drug use in South Africa is twice the world norm. 15% of South Africans have a drug problem. Drug abuse is costing South Africa 20 billion rand a year and could pose a bigger threat to the country's future than the AIDS pandemic. According to SAPS figures, 60% of national crimes are related to substance abuse. In order to curb the crisis, police often resort to extreme measures to catch the perpetrators at the source of the problem.
Substance abuse is ravaging the fabric of our society. And it's been on the increase since 1994.
Drug abuse in South Africa is very widespread. As it is in any country, it infiltrates all pockets of our society. It's quite clear and well accepted that addiction has no prejudices.
Drug peddlers are a breed unto themselves. They're unscrupulous people. They don't peddle drugs not because they don't know the effects. They do because they know the effects. And they quite appreciate that once people are hooked onto the drug, they have created a market for themselves.
Drugs continue to be a blight in our society, in particular with respect to the fact that they can be considered as victimless crimes, because between a drug dealer and a drug user, no one will really go to the police and complain, but it continues to do serious destruction in our societies. We've seen parents, schools, institutions that have actually been put into distraught by the drugs. The only possible way in terms of which sometimes the police can actually get to the drug dealers is by way of entrapment.
Our law allows for controlled police trap operations. In circumstances in which a person is suspected of dealing drugs, the police are entitled to set a trap to catch them, as long as the legal guidelines of the Criminal Procedure Act are followed.
Our 6 months undercover work comes down to this. We just need solid proof that this guy is a dealer. He sells his stuff to school kids, and that's what makes him the worst kind. But we need to catch him first. We know that he deals out of his house, so if we can get you in there without raising suspicion, then we'll get a chance to catch him.
Do we know if he's backing?
Not that I know of. Look, this guy is independent, and that means no fat cats protecting him, supporting him. Don't worry, we're not dealing with Scarface here. This will be the standard trap procedure. You make the call, place the order, and do the deal. There's 2 grand in there. They've all been photocopied to link him to the deal.
What if he wants to meet before, Captain?
Then you meet him before. Listen, you need to do whatever it takes to make him feel comfortable, to earn his trust. I have Ngwenya on my back with this one. She needs this guy taken off the streets as in yesterday. This is promotion material, Manuel. Don't let me down.
In terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, and more specifically Section 252A, there's specific procedures. Any law enforcement officer is entitled to carry out a trap. He's provided with photocopied money. He uses that money to execute the transaction, to buy the drug or the illicit product. Now, if that money is found on the premises, there's a direct link between the drugs that was bought and the money that was handed over. So the buy and sell process is proven.
The most important thing about police traps is that the conduct of the police itself must not go beyond giving the criminal an opportunity to commit the crime. So the conduct of the police must not amount to an inducement to commit a crime where someone wouldn't have. So basically the trap just gives somebody with an intent already to commit a crime the opportunity to do so.
He did so well, I forgot where I put the damn thing. It's cool, man. Sorry about all the red tape. Just gotta make sure you're not dealing to a cop, you know? Don't talk to me, Tom! This is what we are exposed to.
Okay, so there's 50 loops.
Yeah. Let's see, 50 loops. At $40 a loop, so that's 2 big ones. I trust you, bro. I've got some Charlie somewhere if you want to bump for the road.
It's cool. I just deal, man. Rikesh, gotta get out of here, man.
Of course.
We got him.
Drug dealing is certainly something that impacts tremendously on the society at large. There are people profiting and I suppose benefiting financially from the enormous destruction that they wreak across the society.
The chain goes from producer to dealer to user right up to the top echelons of organised crime and drug lords.
Coming up, the police have caught the dealer, but was the trap lawful?
I've never seen that amount of heroin before.
The Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act makes dealing in drugs a criminal offence. In terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, any law enforcement officer, official of the state, or any other authorized person may make use of a trap or engage in an undercover operation in order to detect, investigate, or uncover an offense. The evidence obtained by the trap will be allowed in court if the official conduct does not go beyond providing an opportunity to commit an offense.
The law tries to limit the number of times a trap can be used. So the nature of the offense is considered by a court. Whether there were other means that could be employed to get the evidence and to stop the commission of the particular offense, the seriousness of the offense, and how prevalent that offense is in society. So in cases of drug trafficking, for instance, that would be common because it is very prevalent, drug trafficking, and the impact of that offense on society is huge. So the interest of the public, the safety of the public, or the interests of the security of the state are issues that are taken into consideration. A trap would require authorization, and a court has to check that the authorization has been granted. And issues such as whether or not there were threats made to the accused that caused him to commit the crime, whether or not the policemen played on certain human characteristics, such as the emotions of the accused, or friendships, or other human characteristics that, had they not been brought into play, the offense would not have been committed.
There's one primary duty on a trap when he's involved in undercover operations in terms of Section 252A. And that primary responsibility is his conduct, his or her conduct shouldn't go further than merely providing an opportunity to commit an offense.
As a result of the police trap operation, Prakesh was arrested and brought to trial on a charge of dealing in drugs in contravention of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act.
And is the said heroin dealer in question in this room today?
He is.
Inspector Manuel, can you point him out to the court? Let the record show that Inspector Manuel has identified the accused as the heroin dealer in question. I have no further questions for the witness, Your Worship.
The law states that evidence obtained in a so-called trap is only admissible if the official concern goes no further than to provide the suspect with an opportunity to commit the offense. Do you agree?
Yes.
You contacted my client on 3 separate occasions, each time asking for an increased amount of heroin, correct?
Correct.
Did it not occur to you that his judgment would be impaired due to the temptation of the increased amount of money?
I just followed procedure. His emotional state was far from relevant.
Inspector Manuel, I put it to you that you coerced Mr. Mudley into selling you the drugs.
That's not true.
Isn't it clear to you in your line of work that my client struggles from a substance abuse problem?
Even the small-time junkie dealers need to be taken off the streets.
Well, don't you find it strange that Captain Medisa put a 6-man strong entrapment force behind catching someone who, by your own admission, is a small-time dealer? Why waste all the time and effort?
Conduct of a trap, of a police trap, is heavily regulated by law. And it's not up to the police to just run amok and see whether there is somebody they may induce to commit a crime in order to arrest. It is a particular technique that the law uses in order to catch offenders of such a crime. A policeman cannot act in a manner that encourages or leads somebody to commit a crime when the intent wasn't there. The policeman is simply becomes a vehicle for the accused to commit a crime that he already intended to.
It's important that the trapping must not go beyond what will the accused normally have done in the circumstances. Let's say, for instance, the accused normally sell his drugs for 1,000 rand, and the entrapment comes, and the police come and offer 100,000 rand to trap the accused. That will be an inducement more than an entrapment. I think under those circumstances, the court will be unlikely to regard that as justifiable and fair entrapment.
There's basically, I think, about 14 aspects that the court do consider to determine whether the trap went beyond merely creating an opportunity.
If a court is persuaded that the trap has gone beyond merely providing an opportunity, the court has a discretion to disallow the evidence in its entirety.
What was the largest amount of drugs you sold before you met Inspector Manuel?
Probably 50 bucks. I've never seen that amount of heroin before.
How did you get into dealing?
I lost my job last year. I had all family to support. My mother, everyone. A buddy of mine is a merchant. He told me that I should start dealing. He said it would get me back on my feet. I thought it would be temporary. I never wanted to sell drugs.
Did your addiction have anything to do with your decision to start dealing?
I never touched drugs before. I've never respected junkies. I couldn't resist.
What steps are you taking to get off drugs?
I tried getting help. I was in a program. 2 weeks into it, I met Siraj. He offered me a lot of money. He told me that if he liked the stuff, he would come back for more. I was broke. I couldn't resist.
Why do you think they chose you?
I work alone. I'm not part of some major operation, you know. The police needed to show that they were on top of the drug problem in my area. Get some brownie points from the community. I was an easy target. Simple.
It cannot be that society can accept that once you have committed a crime in a drug-induced state to say that that was your addiction. Because the effect of that would be that you deliberately place yourself in a position where you are not able to control your desires, to control your drive, where you lose sense of your responsibility and morality. And then you turn around and use the same thing as a defense. Because then it means that it's got no start, no end. All of us could take a first step of firstly dissociating and unburdening ourselves with the responsibilities that we have, commit a crime, and then say, I was under the influence, I'm an addict, I need this, I can't live without it. So even for an addict, there must be some level of responsibility that society insists that the addict carries.
Coming up, with the entrapment shrouded in suspicion, will the state be able to win its case?
What other lies have you told this court? You say you started dealing last year?
Yes.
Do you remember the date?
Late June, around the World Cup.
We've heard from neighbors of yours who testify that in February last year, you bought a brand new BMW.
I still had my job, so I could afford it.
But your wife testified earlier that you have been on the verge of bankruptcy for almost 2 years before you were retrenched. Mr. Moodley, I put it to you that you've been dealing heroin far longer than a year. And that's how you've paid for the expensive car.
No. My mother helped me buy it.
What does your mother do?
She's a pharmacist.
The same mother who you are supporting is a pharmacist.
I never said I supported my mother.
Unless I experienced an auditory hallucination, I think you'll find you did, Mr. Moodley. But we can go back and check the records if that will appease you.
No. I don't know.
Oh, so you admit you lied. What other lies have you told this court?
The cross-examination remains the key tool in our courts in terms of ascertaining the truth. And one of those instruments of measures is whether the evidence presented before the court is a contradictory evidence. And the particular witness that is contradicting himself or witnesses that have presented a contradictory evidence run the risk of their credibility being attacked and their evidence at the end of the day being rejected if there is a more consistent, honest, and clear evidence from the other side.
Prakesh was found guilty of drug trafficking as charged. 4 weeks later, the magistrate was ready to pronounce her verdict on the appropriate sentence.
When a court imposes a sentence, it should be considered that dealing is a far greater evil and deserving of a harsher sentence than the mere possession of the drug. Mr. Moodley, you were prepared to risk your liberty by profiting from other people's addiction to drugs, and therefore should be appropriately sentenced. The fact that you had a substance abuse problem does not excuse your actions. The state makes provision to assist people such as yourself who are suffering the effects of addiction. Furthermore, Mr. Moodley, you showed no remorse, and you attempted to rely on your personal circumstances to justify your behavior. These circumstances do not outweigh the court's responsibility to protect the community from drug dealing and its disastrous consequences. On the count of dealing a dependence-producing substance, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years imprisonment.
In terms of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act, the sentences for the various categories differ. Like, for instance, dependence producing drugs, the maximum sentence is 5 years for possession. In respect of undesirable dependence producing drugs, the dealing thereof can lead to a conviction and sentence of up to 25 years.
In dealing with sentencing in drug matters, the interest of the community plays a much greater role and much greater emphasis from the courts because of what drugs have become in our communities. Without overemphasizing that over the nature of the crime and the personal circumstances of the particular accused, because of what drugs are doing in our societies, the courts have tended to be harsh on people that have been convicted of drug-related offenses.
When a court sentences a drug peddler or drug trafficker, it must express society's outrage both at the morality of the trafficker and at the various adverse impacts that the consumption of drugs has on society. It is very easy for people who don't use drugs to become victims and become couriers of drugs. They must understand the responsibility they are taking, and they must simply understand whatever the financial gains there may be, they are simply not worth the consequences.
Entrapment might continue to pose a constitutional challenge because it can, in certain instances, be viewed as a violation of the accused person's rights to fair trial. The evidence that has been obtained by the police might be incriminating the accused. The accused might have been forced not to exercise his right to silence. But even so, the entrapment remains a legitimate method of securing or of detecting crime. And I think until such time the court has set out clear guidelines, I think this is still a necessary and a legitimate tool of dealing with the big drug problem that we've got as a nation.
The Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act makes it an offense to deal in prohibited substances. The penalties for dealing in drugs are severe, and a conviction may result in a long period of imprisonment. The Criminal Procedure Act sets out strict requirements for police trap operations. A law enforcement officer or state official may make use of an undercover trap operation to detect, investigate, or uncover the commission of an offense or to prevent the commission of an offense. Any evidence obtained as a result of a trap operation can be accepted in court as long as the trap did not go beyond providing an opportunity to commit the offense. The final verdict was brought to you by